How much of a website can AI build by itself? I'm going to be answering this question in this video. So this really is an intelligence test for ChatGPT and LLMs in general. Ideally, I want to be able to type something like this in. Can I ask ChatGPT, hey, build for me a video streaming platform that can take in user-generated content? And it thinks for a while, perhaps spins up some cloud infrastructure, and boom, you've got YouTube. I'm hoping we reach the point where that can happen, but where are we right now? So what I've just described is on the complex end of the spectrum of what you can build. It's a very custom built application with a lot of cloud infrastructure and a lot of code running continuously. On the simple end, we've got WordPress, Wix, Squarespace, essentially templates which just have cookie cutter components that a lot of websites use. I mean, you might have guessed that right now we're more on the simple end of the spectrum, and that we're all expecting and hoping that over the next few years or maybe even months, we don't know how these things move really fast, we're going to slowly move towards the complex end. In the middle, funnily enough, we have something called framework-based development, where it's not as complex as, say, YouTube, but it's definitely not cookie cutter. In this video, I'll be attempting to build template-based platforms with ChatGPT, and I'll take you through the process. So in terms of template-based, there's a variety from informational, educational, blogs, business, as well as charities, and a whole suite of examples here. I'm going to take 9 of these examples and build them. Now, before we move on, I want to make the point that in this video, I'll be essentially getting code out of ChatGPT, but what currently does exist in terms of the state of the art with AI building websites is to take these existing platforms, in this example Wix, and have LLMs, or let's say ChatGPT, decide on the components to put into the site as well as the content. Meaning ChatGPT, when Wix uses ChatGPT, it's not using ChatGPT to write the HTML code. It's using it to decide on the Wix components to add in, such as maybe the images here, perhaps having a blog, perhaps having, I'm not sure what Wix components exist, to be honest with you, but all of these bits are decided on by ChatGPT, but it itself doesn't write the code. But this is the point of this video. Cool, AI coding. So in terms of the methods, we've got everything from the manual to automatic. I'm going to start off with the very manual, just so it's easier to understand the process. Sometimes when you look online with the latest news, everyone just shows you the end result, and you have no idea how it works, except you're amazed. I want to take you through the process so you can have an idea and feel that at least you yourself can build it. The step up from just copying and pasting from ChatGPT is pretty much to do the same, but with Copilot. Copilot, and in this example, I'm sort of pointing out VS Code. Copilot, I think the easiest way to think of it, if you haven't used it already, is that it's a very good autocomplete. So in this example, it's auto-completed the actual entire function, which wasn't the most complex function, to be honest, and they've given the full description here. So it's a really good autocomplete that you can ask questions and you can talk to. But essentially, by using the ChatGPT interface, what we're doing is, number one, we're able to iterate on the sequence of prompts much more easily. We're able to actually see what's going on rather than sort of having it all done behind the curtains. And more importantly, we can then use it in a more automated system. So what I have built, the only automation I've done here is just to have notebooks, meaning Jupyter notebooks and Python running, to run these prompts for us, and I'll show that to you in the course of this video. All the way on the right hand side, the advanced version, which perhaps might be in a later video, is to use anything from an agent framework, in this case LangChain or LangGraph, We can have AutoGen, which is a multi-agent system. And over on the right, the icon is for Devin, which is an AI engineer. There's a variety of things you can use. I've just used these as examples. But there are quite powerful ways of automating this entire development. So I've just laid this out just to show that even though we are starting off with just asking ChatGPT and copying and pasting the code, the potential for full automation is there, and there's powerful tools you can use. Cool. Of course, this is just making the point that whatever we do here, if we just do the same thing in 6 months' time, but by using GPT-5 or the latest model that anyone has come out with, probably will get better results. All right, let's get into it. If I ask ChatGPT, hey, build a website for me, it doesn't. Instead, it comes back to us saying, hey, well, what website do you want? You know, so it goes into consulting mode, right? So then I'll fill it in, and then it'll say, hey, okay, based on your requirements, this is what you want. But I mean, I want a website. I don't want, a consultation. So then I force the HTML by saying, hey, give me the HTML, and it comes up with this. It's not too bad as a first pass. So if you think about it, it's done what we've asked. This technically is a website. You can't really argue with that. It's not exactly what we'd like, but it's done the job if you read, verbatim what we've actually asked it. It's missing the content though, so if you say fill in the missing content, it's added it in. It's missing images here though, which is, of course, it's not creating images and it doesn't know about which images exist on the internet at this point. Fair enough. So what if we don't want to go through this back and forth, So we can just ask for the HTML straight away. So this is a new chat, and here we're saying, hey, build me a website, about coffee, and output the HTML. We're not asking for a back and forth. We're not asking for a consultation. We're asking for the HTML straight away. It comes up with this. Again, it's completed the task, but not the way you want, which basically means there's a bit of prompt engineering that we need. We need to ask exactly what we want from it and understand that probably it's going to be a bit lazy, right? So here, this is better than what we saw before, primarily because we gave it a bit of a requirement, a list of requirements, but probably can do better, right? I'll go through the prompts more, but before I do, I've decided to build these websites in this example. So the prompts, as I said, was here. So initially we're going to go through a consultation process because the only thing I'm going to change between these sequence of prompts is going to be the first part, right? Where I'm going to say, in the first one, I'll say I want something to do with home gardening. Next, I'm going to say community food bank. Then I'm going to say local art classes. Besides that, I want all of the prompts to be the same, right? So it's going to be this sequence. It's a bit more than that, but this just shows you the general setup. And of course, a bit of prompt engineering had to be done, meaning I've tried different prompts to see what worked best. And sometimes ChatGPT itself would come up with interesting ideas, and I would incorporate that back into the prompt just to get a much more consistently better result next time. All right, let's get into it. So for the home gardening tips, so this was the first one I made, and you can see that there was quite a long thread. All right, so I'll show that to you here. So I did start off by saying I want to build a website, as I said I would, and then it did the normal consultation. I said output the single HTML. I wanted one HTML file rather than multiple files. It's just easier for now. I wanted it to come up with its own set of requirements. I don't want it to just rely solely on the requirements I give. I want it to come up with something for itself. So okay. So this is the first version of the website. So if you take this HTML, copy and paste it, you get this. So this was the first draft, which isn't too bad. So if I click on blog, it does try to scroll down, but it comes to the bottom. If I go to contact, it does the same. Subscribe button, it clicks through, but of course there's no backend infrastructure to take it. And then beyond that, I give it additional requirements. It comes up with more. I say add content, and it comes up with this. And this is just SEO optimization. So at this point, it pretty much has come up with this. It's added the content, it's glorified the footer. With the accessibility, so I think this last bit was accessibility features, and I said maybe add a high contrast mode toggle. And so it's created this. And I didn't give it this code. I just said, I want some accessibility mode thing, and it gave me this, which is interesting. Of course, as a human, we'd probably want to iterate and improve on it further, but for an AI, it's not the worst, right? I think after a point, it did veer off where, I think the version you're seeing is the corrected version. I think one of the HTML tags wasn't closed properly. I think if you have a look, it corrected it. I think there's some unclosed tags, some semantics were fixed, and it came up with that. And yeah, one thing I also started doing is I really wanted to come up with its own improvements. I don't want all the websites to look the same. This is one thing I found, that the websites do tend to look very similar. The stricter you are with your requirements, the more consistent, you get more consistency, but then all the different websites look the same. So there are pros and cons here, right? A balancing act. Beyond this, after a certain point, I saw that it wasn't really helping. It would give the exact same HTML over and over again. Yeah, after this point, I was asking for feedback on my actual prompts. So there you go. So we're up to this right now. There you can see added content. Oh, one thing, of course, there's no images. Except, look at this. This actually is an image, right? Initially I didn't ask for it, but it knows about something called placeholder.com, which can generate whatever image you want. So if I change this over here, I can say blah, it doesn't matter, and I press enter. Okay, I think yeah, there you go. It's generated this image. This is technically an image. So, but from my point of view, this isn't the nicest. But after seeing this, that this was within its own neural network, it knew about this without me even suggesting it, I decided to incorporate it back into the prompts. So in the later versions, in this next website that I made, it knew to use that. And I used other image template image generators as well, just so that it's just nicer for us to look at. So this was the first version of the community food bank that it made, and with improvements after the full sequence of prompts, it came up with this. Again, good thing is it's added the content. This does look, the right side does look more fleshed out. The left one is nice, but the right one is more fleshed out. But unfortunately, and this, I found this too often, that it would remove some of the good things, so I think these additions of content, I wouldn't say you have to, I would suggest say you could, but then it would absolutely put them in. But then I think in this example, the donate and volunteer is probably better, right? And the first, and more importantly, I didn't say to remove anything. I said you could have all of these little elements, but it just chose to remove this. So I think there's an element of the AI not really understanding what we want. The fact that it is a next token predictor does become obvious the longer the chat goes on for. Okay, so after this point, I made a notebook to essentially run through these prompts. So these were all of the prompts that I fed in, all right? And of course, you can see I started making these, a sequence of these where I would ping it to find any issues with the HTML so that you could fix it. And then I would essentially run through it. And the system prompt was, you are an elite web developer with over 20 years of experience, having worked at Facebook, Google, and several consultancy companies. And the sequence would start where I would change the initial part, saying I want a gym website, for example. Okay, so let's speed through it. So these are the websites. Art classes. Oh yeah, before we speed through it, for the art classes, I'm taking it through one step at a time. The the second prompt that generated HTML was to add the header, to add a footer, and it did that. Then it was to add content, and it did that. And then this part was, asking it, what would a competitor have? So for the local art classes, it figured out perhaps they'd have a map. So it would put a map in here. Unfortunately, we run into the issue again where the longer the chat thread grows on for, the worse it ends up performing. So in this example, the formatting was destroyed, and even though I asked was there any bugs, it would say yes, there is a bug, but then it just wouldn't fix it. It would spit out the exact same HTML because from its point of view, it's a next token predictor. You can think of it as it's predicting the next bit of code. And when a chat thread is very long, then it's seen the same code so many times that from its point of view, it would just, from its point of view, providing the same code again and again is more correct because it's just predicting the next token. It's not really thinking. Does that make sense? So after this point, by the time it got to this, the chat thread was so long, it would just kept outputting damaged or like bad HTML, even though we knew what was wrong with it. So I think the chat thread was just too long by this point. Either way, I think this is a good state for a site. And now let's really speed through it. So this is a photography site. So one thing to notice is the header is down here, and it's only because I've taken the screenshot of the full page. And in a sense, what it's thinking is that the top of the page is here. So just ignore that. So this header part would really be at the top here. All right, so the law firm is here. One thing I want to point out is for the photography site, I noticed it came up with this format for the FAQ, and I really liked it. And I saw that it was using Bootstrap's accordion CSS styling. So then I added rather to the prompts, when you add new sections, you could use good styling. For example, with the FAQ, you could use the accordion style. And after that, even though it was a suggestion and not mandatory, it started using this almost all the time. For the marketing, again, looks all right. For construction, and here it started using placeholder.com again. I gave it a list of 3 different image generator sites you could use. The bakery, I like the images here. So the image generator site it used could take in like a text for what type of image you wanted, like a tag. It wasn't like Dolly, it would just like a tag search more than anything. And the gym, right? So not too bad. Again, one thing I wasn't so happy about is the fact that these ended up becoming very similar to each other. Again, it's one of those things where on the one hand, I want them to be consistently good. On the other, I do want them to be more unique and not look all the same. But at the level of AI, that is a bit of a balancing act, But yeah, let's say if you run this again in 6 months to a year, and definitely in a couple of years, probably with the same sequence of prompts, it'll be much, much better. All right, improvements. First one is, let's use Dolly or any other AI image generator. I think that would make it a lot more fully AI generated, right? I did one of the prompts right then. I would ask each of these is come up with the prompt for Dolly to generate an image for each and every image, including the logo. So in this example, it generated the logo here. So we can come up with the prompts quite well. I just didn't have the time to go in and replace every single image. That was just too much, and even with the code I have here. And the next bit would be, in terms of improvements, is to use GPT Vision. So the good part was, just by asking it, is there a bug? It would spot bugs such as missing or unclosed tags or missing angled brackets or things like that. So that's quite powerful. But at the same time, I am very curious, and I do think it would help greatly to use the vision capabilities of AI for it to see what the website actually looks like. So I'm curious to what improvements can we achieve. Beyond this, I think the standard would be like, so we did just make a single page responsive website where everything was contained within a single HTML file. Number one, so let's separate out CSS, JavaScript, HTML, number one. Number two, let's have multiple files, right? So multiple HTML files, one per page, rather than everything on one page. I think that would make it better. Of course, that would introduce complexity in the prompts. But I think that would be better. Cool. Just making a point that with GitHub Copilot, you can pretty much do the same, but automation with what we've done is better just in a simple notebook, to be honest with you. And with Copilot, it's more about, if you want an assistant that to generate some parts of the code, but what I wanted was for everything to be fully automated as much as possible. In this notebook, all I changed was pretty much the first prompt. Everything else was exactly the same. Just this bit would change. But with Copilot, it's too involved, to be honest. All right, getting to something more powerful. So instead of notebook, well, even within a notebook, instead of manually, so this was a bit of code here, I could use LangChain to pretty much do the same thing. Perhaps, maybe add a few other improvements. But where the power would really start coming is to use a multi-agent system. And this example, this icon is for AutoGen, which is produced by Microsoft. So what a multi-agent system is to have essentially ChatGPT, but different ChatGPTs each with a different system prompt. So the first one would be a consultant, and its job would be to help us decide on the specifics of the website, understand our user base, maybe decide on a color scheme, everything about the site, give us suggestions for names, etc. After it's come up with a lot of the decisions for the site, go on to the product manager, which perhaps takes in the requirements or refines the requirements, and then it starts pinging it across to everyone in the team, where all of these different agents can work together to improve the website. So the web developer can come up with a template, the content writer can fill in the missing content, the graphics designer, when it sees an image, perhaps could go to Dolly and generate an image, put it back in. The tester could highlight bugs, the web developer can go back and fix it. The competitor analysis could have a look either from its own sort of intrinsic knowledge, or maybe even going out and researching, could see what components do competitors have and incorporate those elements, or add those elements as requirements, feeding it to the product manager. All of these essentially can get involved to work together to make the website much better. And I put the UX designer. I was thinking perhaps it could work with the consultant, come up with a template before anyone gets started. So this entire system perhaps would need a lot more thinking, but this is a good start already, I think. Now, so something even more powerful than this would be an AI engineer. So this is even more in its infancy now. It's developing very rapidly, but it's still in its infancy. So what happened was Devin came onto the scene about, I think, a month or so back, and they came up with the videos saying, hey, look, we have an AI that can complete a lot of engineering tasks for you. And then immediately people came up and debunked some of these videos, but the point still stands. An AI engineer would be extremely powerful, right? This is the infant stage, right? What's more important is to see and understand where will this same tech be with just the next AI model, or 2 or 3 models down the line, The funny thing is, very soon after Devin came onto the scene, an open source version of it came on, and then Microsoft, to not wanting to be left behind, came up with GitHub Copilot Workspace. All of these are AI engineers, and all of these are very much in its infancy, and all of these have their flaws. But watch this space, essentially. All in all, thank you for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it.